over the years, I mentioned I don't use banks, and I truly don't use banks. I haven't used the bank since about 2010 for any of my investments. I feel like every lead that comes in or every possible deal has a way of working it out if you know how to.
Well, Derek, thank you for coming on the show today. I've been wanting to talk to somebody about creative deal structuring because I think we're in a place in the market where we've got sellers that are up here still, buyers that are down here, and we have to fill that void. And so I think you can bring us a lot of value today. So thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for putting all the pressure on me. Now I got to deliver.
You bet you do. I've got some serious followers, so they're going to have a lot of questions. Matter of fact, if you're watching this and you've got questions for Derek, put it in the comments. We'll make sure that he sees it. But Derek, let's start off. If you could give us a little bit about your background.
Well, going back 20 years when I got started, I was a construction worker that started flipping houses. And, a good majority of my experience is in the residential space. I've crossed over a little bit into commercial, but I got started and built up a fairly decent sized portfolio. And then 2007, I got wiped out, and I pretty much lost everything except my personal home and my underwear. And that was about it. But that was, and I say this publicly all the time, that was the biggest blessing that ever happened to me. It forced me to either quit or learn alternative methods of buying or controlling property.
Yeah.
Because back then I used banks for everything. And I see a lot of that already starting to happen in today's market. People built their businesses only using bank financing. Now that financing is more expensive, they can't get deals done. And to me, this is Christmas come early. There's so much opportunity that we're already seeing. And I believe that your viewers will get some pieces out of this that can definitely help them moving forward.
Yeah, I do too. I think that we can really bring some value to them. Now, let's jump right into it. And deals that are happening right now, are you focused on, and what deals are you trying to do? Where are you finding your debt? Are you doing private placement, seller financing? What have you been doing?
Yes, and everything.
Okay.
So I don't have a box that I buy in. I take my leads, whether they come from our direct marketing or they come as referrals, and I work every lead for what it is. And I want to sit down with that seller, commercial or residential, and figure out what's their biggest challenges and how can I solve their challenges for them. So right now I'm working on hopefully a syndication on an RV resort that we want to develop out further. And that's literally just starting right now. So it's very much in its infant stages. But I have a colleague that bought an old resort with some older cabins on it. I happen to live in Wisconsin, and this project is in Wisconsin. But he's got 29 acres of land and 1,900 feet of water frontage, and it could be developed into an RV resort as well. So over the years, I mentioned I don't use banks, and I truly don't use banks. I haven't used the bank since about 2010 for any of my investments. So along the way, I along with a business partner, we started and ran a hard money lending company for the last 10 years. And we got really good at raising money and talking to people about opportunities, whether it was within our own lending company or our own real estate deals. So circling all the way back to your question, I feel like every lead that comes in or every possible deal has a way of working it out if you know how to have a conversation, how to talk to people, which is kind of a lost art today, Joe, because so many people are usually just staring at their phones or doing the two-finger shuffle, texting and emailing.
Yeah, well, I think we're going through a relearning process, right? It's been so easy the last 10 plus years to get deals done. So I think, talking to a seller about doing seller financing, it gets to be an art form, right?
Absolutely. And the fun thing is I've been doing those types of creative structures the last 10 years while
Right.
everyone else was just focusing on using the big damn hammer, which was cash offers or bank financed offers.
Yeah.
And to me, and I can give you some examples, which would be more residential examples, but it crosses over into the commercial side.
Mhm.
Um, I just have 3 properties under contract right now from one seller, and he wanted full retail. Like that is what he was stuck on. He had a number in his head, and I said, okay, that's fantastic. If I give you full retail for this property, I need to be able to pick the terms that make sense for us.
Right.
And when I ask somebody, Joe, would you ever pay full retail in this stagnant slash declining market? What would you say?
Be pretty tough.
Be pretty tough, right?
Yeah. It depends on the tenant, of course, but yeah, for in
Right.
commercial. Yeah.
So in this particular case, his biggest challenge is the property management company he's had managing his properties has failed him miserably. He has not been profitable in over 3 years. And so my proposal to him was I can make you profitable and you can make money for the first time in 3 years. And I'm going to give you exactly what you want, your full asking price at full retail, but it's going to be 0% interest. And that's the deal we're doing. Oh, and zero down too. He's
Yeah.
getting zero down, 0% interest, but he's getting his full asking price.
So it
And
worked for both of you.
and he's tickled to death
Yeah.
because he's finally got the monkey off his back.
Yeah.
And I am starting to see that, of course, on the residential side, but on the commercial side, business owners, especially mom and pop, that are trying to retire
Yeah.
and they can't. We're starting to look at some of those small businesses and
Yeah.
being able to get the seller financing because otherwise all they're going to be able to do is wind it down, sell off the equipment, and they're going to get pennies on a dollar anyways.
Absolutely. Are you guys doing any sale leasebacks right now?
Not currently,
Okay.
but
Yeah, because that's something, there's a lot of small businesses right now need a little cash. So there's an opportunity to go in and say, hey, listen, if your business you need cash, then let me buy the real estate and I'll give you the money to operate your business.
what I like to use more so than that, Joe, and it just depends on taxation, but I like
Yep.
to use options.
Okay.
So, and I'll do that on both sides of the fence, commercial and residential. Um, I've done it more with residential, but
Yeah.
when somebody's having that challenge, if they need 20, 30, 40, $50,000, and I like to do those using my retirement accounts.
Yeah. Okay.
If I can hold options in my retirement accounts, they're safe. They're not, there's no liability risk.
Yeah.
But I secure my options using a mortgage,
Okay.
and very few people do that or
Yeah.
even know why to do it.
Okay.
So are you
Well,
familiar with that strategy,
I
Joe?
was going to say, walk us through it.
Okay. And by the way, I'll preface this with I have a PhD, a public high school diploma.
I
So
have one of those.
I'm
Wallback
very,
Public. Go
yes, I'm very
Mustangs.
smart. So so I get in debates with attorneys all the time, and it's fun because they went to a whole lot of school and I didn't.
Yeah.
Um, why do you, let me ask you this question this way.
Yep.
Why do you think it would be wise to secure an option using a mortgage or a deed of trust, depending on your state?
Is there a tax savings?
No.
I didn't think so. I don't know.
Okay.
This is
Well,
something I've not dealt with. This is going to be
let,
all new to me. That's why I want to hear about it.
yeah. Well, let's play this out. Okay. You get
Okay.
an option on a piece of property,
Yep.
commercial development, let's say it's got 100 acres of land and you get the option to buy it and you secure, or I'm sorry, you record your option on public record. Okay.
Right.
That's what
Okay.
most people would do. Have options ever been missed in a title search?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So if that landowner decided to sell that 100 acres to somebody else and the option was missed in the title search and it closed and it's sold, what is your recourse?
Attorneys.
Attorneys, lawsuit,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So you're going to have a lawsuit against the title company and a lawsuit against the seller.
Right.
What are the odds that you would ever get that sale that closing reversed?
It would be very difficult. You might get a little bit of a settlement, but your attorney's probably going to take it all.
Well, you're going to get a money judgment, most
Yeah.
likely, and then it's on you to collect on the money judgment.
Yeah.
But the odds of getting that sale reversed, that buyer didn't have a clue. That buyer didn't
Right.
know that you had an option,
Yeah.
right? So if that option was secured with a mortgage and the same scenario happened, the seller sold to somebody else, that didn't wipe out the mortgage. If the title company missed the mortgage, if they were silly enough to miss the mortgage in a title search, of course there's going to be E&O claims and everything else.
Sure.
But the closing didn't wipe out the mortgage. I can
Right.
still go and foreclose and take that property away. Okay.
Okay.
So that is the number one reason I like it if there's any funny business on the seller side. The other way and the other reason is, let's say the seller just flat out refuses to show up at closing and sell you the property for what you agreed
Right.
in the
Yeah.
option. Okay, I'm going to foreclose and take it away from you. You're going to maybe get what we agreed to, but you may
Yep.
not, depending on your state's foreclosure laws. Now you may get nothing. And if you're foreclosing and there's liens ahead of your option and also ahead of your recorded mortgage, you would be foreclosing subject to those senior liens.
Right.
But often, I don't know if you have a whole lot of experience in the lending space, but when a lender like us forecloses, if we were in second position and there's somebody in first position, there's a
Yep.
thing called lender courtesy.
Right.
And often first position, as long as we continue to make the payments to them, they won't call it due and they won't foreclose.
Right.
So it's a back door to a subject to purchase
Right.
if we foreclose, because they look at us as a lender.
Right. Of course.
But if you were trying to do a sub two the sneaky way and they found out, they'd likely call it loan due.
Right.
So that is why I do it the way we do it. And fortunately, I've not had to use the mortgage to force anybody or to take
Okay.
anything away. But and here's another really fun part. So this will be a residential story, Joe, but I put a lease and an option on a piece of waterfront property in Wisconsin, and we did some rehab to it, and then I put it on the market on the MLS, and I listed it as power of attorney for the current owner of record. Okay. The reason I did that is when I find a buyer for that waterfront property, if they're using any kind of FHA financing or VA financing, there's seasoning requirements from their lender. So I could not exercise my option and double close to somebody using government-backed financing because of that title seasoning issue. So instead, I list the property as power of attorney for the current deed holder. When the property closes, I get paid on the HUD as a mortgage payoff. So it does not trip up any underwriting issues whatsoever.
Very good.
So my mortgage payoff is my net profit that I was supposed to make after the deed holder, the seller, the original seller, gets what we agreed to in our option.
Are you buying right now?
Absolutely. I have
Yep.
six properties under contract currently pending closings, and only one is a cash purchase.
Okay.
Everything else is creatively structured.
How are you putting these valuations that on your properties? On I guess on resident, it's residential you're doing on those sections.
Primarily, yeah.
Yeah. How are you putting valuations on there? What numbers are you looking at right
I only buy on cash flow, and I'm in the
Okay.
Midwest, so we can still buy cash flow.
now? Right.
A lot of the deals I'm doing right now, I'm looking at taking over subject to very, very favorable interest rates.
Yeah.
So we've got a sad deal going on right now where there's a man has a VA loan. He's a Navy veteran and he's got some illnesses. He's going to sheriff's sale January 9th, and so he's going to be homeless.
Right.
We're working with him currently. We're going to buy that property subject to his VA loan at 2.25% interest,
Right.
and then find him alternative housing.
Right.
So I can, in the Midwest, I can take that at 2.25% interest, and I can sell it to somebody, an end user, and beat the banks. I
Yeah.
could sell it to them for 6% interest, right?
Still beat the banks. Yeah.
And make a spread. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing more and more of now.
Yeah.
So
Well, if I was somebody new that's really wanting to get into investing right now, and let's say it's on residential, what path would I take right now? How would I go out and make this work for me?
I think you need to go and find somebody that you can shadow,
Okay.
somebody that's got the experience. Because I'll be real blunt with you, Joe. That's just my nature. 99% of people that have started in this business in the last 5 to 10 years
Yeah.
are likely freaking out. They have not seen a downturn. They've not seen a change. Hell, if they're under 30 years old, they've never seen interest rates higher than 5%.
Right.
So, so yeah, there's panic. For those of us that have, been through some of this stuff before, we've seen the end of the movie. We are excited as can be. It
Yeah.
literally is Christmas.
Yep.
So go and find somebody that has that, the scars, the battle scars. Do not become a leech and just suck information out of them. You
Right.
have to
Bring
you have to
value.
bring them value.
Yeah.
And honestly, when I lost everything in '07, I started absorbing everything I could from the gray haired older gentlemen and women that had been through all the crap in the '80s. And, and those are to this day some of my best friends are.
Yeah. And you know what their rates were in the 80s, 14, 15, you know,
Absolutely.
you
And
know,
so what we
so
do now, I mean, we can do exchanges, we can control things with contracts, control things with leases, master lease properties and sublease them to tenants. So if I were looking at apartment complexes, for example, we all know that there's a lot of people that are going to be hitting these loans that are coming due for renewal or just getting called. And the syndications are going to suffer. The raised money, they're going to suffer. The bank is only in at 65-70% of value. They're going to be okay.
yeah.
But everybody that raised money privately and put it in a second position syndication, there's probably some stress going on right now. Well,
Absolutely.
can we not go in and bring in alternative opportunities or structures? Sure we can.
Yeah.
And that might involve just leasing everything from them, putting options in place, renegotiating with their lender, or bringing in private capital.
Right.
There's a lot of things that can be done.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you're exactly right. This is the opportunity. I think, I've sat here with my mouth shut for several years because I was talking to people that were out, being in Southern California, our prices are pretty crazy and their appreciation plays, not cash flow, more often than not. And, I was looking at some of their numbers. I'm like, I don't see how you're going to make this work. And, they would go ahead with the deals and they're calling now going, I don't know what to do. And they're so heavily leveraged in these properties that they're going to have to just give it back.
They are, and it's going to cause a problem for some regional banks that can't take that on. But
Yeah.
again, I don't think the banks are going to have as large of a problem. They weren't into it more
Right.
than 70%.
Yeah.
But those private relationships and those private syndications, um, they should be nervous. And
Yeah.
and that's something as a money raiser. I mean, our hard money lending company was all privately funded.
Yeah.
We've never had institutional backing. So we could go to our investors and we can actually have a real conversation with them and say, well, this is what we're seeing and this is what's happening. And here are the steps we're going to take to alleviate it.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you've got that institution, especially if they sold your loan off, they may still be servicing it, but somebody on Wall Street probably owns your loan at this point.
Yeah.
There's nobody to talk to. And that's the wall I hit in 2007. There was
Yeah.
my bankers were escorted out the door.
Yeah.
My relationships were gone,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. That was common. Those loans got chopped up and nobody really knew who owned the note. Just so many people were involved. Now, when you started your firm, did you friends and family it, or how did you get started?
A lot of it was friends and family initially, but we became very heavily involved in our local real estate investor associations. We were running our own groups. Over time, I had started my group in my local city, and I merged it with about 6 other locations around the state. So we became the preferred lender for the entire state of Wisconsin through those relationships. And
Okay.
a lot of just boots on the ground, shaking hands, or kissing hands and shaking babies, as some people would say.
Yeah.
Um, but today it's a little different. I mean, at this point, I do have more of a national, platform, and it's still all relationship based and referral
Oh, yeah.
based. I don't go out and publicly advertise that I'm raising money. Typically, it's I get introduced to somebody or I seek somebody out.
Yeah. Yeah, referral based. Somebody you've done well by, and they're going to refer you out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's I think we're going to get back to more boots on the ground, don't you think? I think we got so used to, hey, I could just put some posts out and on this thing, and people are going to come swarming to me, and then we find out that's not the case. This is a relationship business,
Well, and
across the board.
and I don't want to sound really like I want to see people fail, but the reality is we do need to thin the herd. The real estate agents, the HGTV house flippers, all these people that they could make money the last few years because you hardly could lose.
Yeah.
But every time there's an adjustment or any kind of change like this, we thin the herd, and
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing.
No, you don't see on YouTube. I used to get asked to come on other people's shows, and there was always I made millions doing Airbnb or the BRR method, and I'd get on their shows and I asked them, I'm like, okay, I know this is great for now, but what's the plan down the road? I mean, there was a guy I talked to had like 30 properties, all in Illinois, and all were Airbnbs. And I said, what's the plan when the economy slows down? He goes, oh, it's going to be great. We're going strong. And he would buy one, get it all fixed up, and then start renting it out, and then take the cash flow from all the others, and just one after the other. And it sounded good, but last I heard, they're out of business. If there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there, you don't want to believe everything, right?
There certainly is, and I've always advised people that ask me, if you're going to buy something like that, make sure it breaks even or cash flows as a long-term rental,
Right.
and then you're protected.
Yeah.
But people get greedy, and they see the big dollar signs, and it a lot of times it's just lack of education, lack of
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
But I was no different. I had to learn the hard way. I mean, when we were building spec homes in the mid 2000s, and by the time the house was built, it had gone up $100,000 in value
Yeah.
in
I remember those
appreciation.
days.
Yeah, except appreciation doesn't feed the family,
Right.
and that spreadsheet can change very quickly, and that's
Yeah.
what people are seeing now in their commercial and residential. I mean, residential is going to hold its value, but it's a heck of a lot harder to sell.
Mhm.
So, in the commercial space, I mean, the Midwest, again, we're pretty stable. We don't have the huge run-ups and the huge drop-offs, but
Right.
East Coast, West Coast, I mean, I sure wouldn't want to own a Class A office building in New York right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Same here in LA. I mean, there's spots of LA that's still performing pretty well, but I want to go back to what I was saying about Airbnb. I don't mean that Airbnb is a bad investment,
Hmm.
or BRR. It's the fundamentals. They were just not fun. They were watching these videos, and just, it all comes down to the fundamentals in investing, right? And, there is you've got to get creative right now to really to hit this void between the sellers and the buyers. And there's ways to do it. There are people doing it right now that aren't just using cash. I mean, we do have a lot of cash buyers sitting on the sidelines right now just waiting. There are people out there doing it right
Well, and the thing that I preach a lot is learning how to actually talk to people the right way.
now. Right.
And so I do a 2-day training where it has nothing to do with deal structuring. It has everything to do with how you actually lead a conversation and talk to people in a human way, and not manipulating them, but you have to get down to what their true challenge is. And honestly, it's hard if there's real estate agents involved, right?
I agree.
I mean, at the end
I
of the
am
day,
one, and I agree. I mean, I just think we're so busy focusing on the dollar that we're taking the human aspect out of it. I mean, this person that's hurting on the other end, it's got to be, and we deal with this pretty regularly right now. We've got some buyers that are trying to be bottom fishers, and they'll say, "Hey, I see this property's been on the market for 2 years. It's worth 4 million. I want to go in at 3.2."
yeah.
And we can either say no, or we can write it up an offer and call the other broker. Go, listen, you're about to get a ridiculous offer. But you've got to have that human connection, and you're going to get more deals done when you look at all sides of the deal.
And that's what I would ask or advise people with if they are dealing with listed properties. It's going to be an uphill battle, but ask the agent, if it's your selling agent, ask the listing agent, can we just have a sit down? Can we have a conference call
Yeah.
and ask questions? Because as agents, and I'm a licensed broker as well, I don't take listings,
Right.
but I know the fiduciary responsibilities, and there's absolutely things that agents cannot say.
Mhm.
So when you get in a position of where you're truly trying to solve somebody's problem, try to get the agents on board. But again, and I'm going to speak more to probably residential agents, many
Yeah.
of them, they don't get the training or the knowledge. In our state, it takes 76 hours to get licensed as an agent
Right.
and pass a test.
Right.
None of that time is actually spent teaching them much about real estate. I mean,
Mhm.
you know this, Joe. It's all about CYA and filling out contracts properly and not getting your broker sued,
Yeah.
and
More
your
and more every
fiduciary
day.
responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's not me bashing on the industry or any realtors, because there's so many awesome realtors out there. The reality is there should be a lot more education required.
Yeah. But it's the really top-notch brokers that I know. You can sit down and talk to them about their client, and they're going to tell you everything about them.
Yep.
You talk to somebody that's out to just make a buck. They don't care about their client. They're doing the deal to do the deal. So, finding the agent that actually does care, and you will get good service. You just got to find the right person.
Absolutely. I did a deal a couple of years ago on a 12 unit building, and it had sat on the market listed with an agent for, well, it was in its second 6 month listing period already. And this is when everything was flying off the shelf.
Yeah.
But it was a non-conforming building. And I don't even know how the agent and I started talking. It had to do with a completely different property. And we got into this debate, which was fun for me. He was getting a little upset. But at one point he said, I take advantage of people's situations. And I said, well, you don't even know what their situation is
Right.
if you don't ask these questions. And I kind of listed out a few questions. And I said, it's not always about price.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, price has nothing to do with their real challenge, but many agents don't ask the questions because
Right.
they don't want to be invasive, or who knows what their reasoning is. So after 30 minutes of this debate going back and forth, um, he said, well, I have this property listed and we haven't been able to find a buyer for it. Would you take a look at it? And this came out of left field because I really thought we were never going to talk again. I mean, he was that upset, and I was kind of laughing that much at him. But it was a fun debate.
Yeah.
But by God, we settled it all out and we figured it out. And I started asking him questions about the seller, and he says, "Well, I don't know that answer. I don't know that answer. I don't know that answer." I said, "Well, you go get those answers, come back to me, and I'm pretty sure we can solve the problem and make this deal work." And we did.
Did you really?
But
Okay.
and since then, now he sends me listings that are all crap, but he sends me
Right.
listings all the time because
Right. Yeah.
you know, the
Yeah. No, I
bottom.
think even as a
Yeah.
buyer, you want to be very, very aware. Those questions are key. You've got to understand where the other person's coming from. And if you take that time to learn that, your chances of getting a deal done are a hell of a lot better.
Well, and oftentimes, Joe, even if you have a lead that isn't going to turn into a deal for you,
Yep.
don't throw that lead away. I've taken one, it was about 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Just a gentleman, it was a house, and it was within the first 5 minutes, I knew there was no way I was going to buy that property. Like, he
Right.
wanted full retail. The house needed absolutely nothing. So I turned the conversation to investing. And I said, when you sell the house to somebody else and you've got $300,000 sitting in your pocket, what are you going to do with it? And we talked for another 20 minutes.
Mhm.
Ultimately, I asked him permission to set a calendar reminder to follow up with him a few months later. And I did. And he closed on the property 6 days after I followed up with him. And he invested $300,000 in our lending company. And since then, added about 500,000 more.
Yeah,
So
it's a relationship business, isn't it, Derek?
you got to know how to talk to people. That's
Yeah,
all it is. And
and give respect, and listen. Especially
yes,
as salespeople, we're so busy. As a young Midwest boy growing up, my dad used to say, "Joe, shut up. You got one mouth and two ears.
no,
Listen twice as much as you talk." And I thought he was just kind of being an ass, but it turns out that was some pretty valuable advice.
absolutely. And this day and age, everybody likes the sound of their own voice, or at least the way their social media looks. And
Yeah,
and that's kind of a pet peeve of mine too, Joe. Anybody can say anything without fear of getting punched in the nose.
yeah.
You know, when you're
I
face
don't
to
know
face,
about the Midwest where I'm from.
well, on social
There's
media,
still that
on,
risk.
on social media, I mean, though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I get it.
But when you get face to face and you're actually talking to people, you need to be respectful and
Yeah,
listen, as you
yeah,
said. And it's a lost art. But
yeah.
for those of us that are good at it, it's a
Well,
great advantage.
there's opportunity there. I mean, being able to communicate and communicate what you want, but also listen to what they need. There's opportunity there somewhere. You just have to find it, and you're not going to find that if you're talking. You got to sit and listen. And so, well, Derek, thank you for taking the time to come on today. This has been a lot of great information, and great. It was great to meet you. And why don't you tell us about how we can get hold of you?
Well, would you mind if I do a little giveaway to your audience, Joe?
Absolutely, please do.
Okay, so over my shoulder, there's a couple books back here. One is called Next Level Your Life. The other one is called The Transformational Journey. I'm a co-author in both of those books. They were published by a guy named Kyle Wilson, who was Jim Rohn's business partner, if you've ever heard of Jim Rohn.
Oh yeah.
And so I'd love to just give the digital version of both of those books away to anybody that just sends me an email and says they heard me on your show.
Okay,
Um,
perfect.
so all they have to do, and I don't know if you can put it in the show notes, but my personal email address, which either myself or my assistant will respond to, is my first name, Derek, Derek, at globalgow.com.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
so
we'll make sure it's down below in the video.